Thank you all for staying. It's great to be the last panel. We won't disappoint you, I promise. We are, as was mentioned, a little bit different. We do have some scientists and entrepreneurs on the panel, but we're really going to talk about operational issues, risk, hiring, some of the practical problems besides the scientific issues and medical issues that a lot of the companies here are trying to resolve. But my experience, I'm a lawyer. I think that a lot of these things are also, as has been noted, very fundamental to the successful launch and continuation of a company. So I will start off by introducing myself. I'm Lonnie Rosenwald, Zuber Lawler. I am a technology lawyer. I represent mostly startup companies. As a business lawyer, I work in multiple technologies, artificial intelligence, SaaS, obviously healthcare and longevity and precision medicine. And I have some clean energy clients, and pretty much any technology interests me.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Greg Cowan, and I'm with Venture Employer Services. I work with small and medium-sized businesses to build scalable and compliant people strategies that align with the business's long-term goals.
Hi, I'm Whitney Kendrick. I am founder and COO of Soma Peptides. My background is in SaaS and technology, but I fell in love with longevity along the way. So I've advised on dozens of startups and been really involved in M&A and acquisition strategies, as well as going into companies and defining what those operational efficiencies should really look like, from software to hiring to structuring to insurance. So thanks.
Hi, I'm Mansukhani, CEO and co-founder of Deciduous Therapeutics. We are focused on restoring the immune system's ability to clear senescent cells, and we apply that to multiple different diseases of aging.
Good afternoon, Jeff Simpson. I'm a risk and insurance advisor with Newfront. Newfront is a full-service brokerage headquartered out of the Bay Area. We do business in all 50 states. We help clients across benefits and total rewards, business insurance and risk, as well as retirement services. My primary focus, and has been for 17 years, is with clients in the life sciences, technology, healthcare, and nonprofit, and excited to be here. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to jump into the questions now. First question, how can leaders align their hiring strategy with scientific goals and investor expectations to fit within the vision of a successful longevity company? And I'm going to start with Robin.
It's a good question. I always think of it in the subtypes of your science should match your hiring. So, for example, we work on T cells, we work on senescence, we work on specific diseases. And so we just hire within those specific skill sets to meet all those needs. That's the first pass for anybody. The second pass is always, can they learn new things with respect to what else the company does? So if they're so rigid they can only fit within one subtype of our work, like senescence, but they can't learn immunology, they can't learn specific disease indications, not a fit for us. If they have the openness, the willingness, the demonstration that they can do that, then the team becomes well integrated. And I say it's important because what you focus on at any given time can change month to month, year to year, and so you need people who are a little bit good at one thing, but also can be role players in the second and third thing. And I think a lot of people sometimes struggle with that, but I think the best ones figure that out, especially in a small company.
Whitney, what do you think?
Yeah, I second that. I think that, it's really important when you're in that startup phase that you're going to have someone that needs to wear a lot of hats. But you need to be really clear about swim lanes. And you also, I think it's really important that each person that's within that company is driven off of mission, transparency. So you're going to have somebody that's responsible for each one of their, what they're excellent at. You always want that. But they're going to need to understand how to be cross-functional. They're going to need to understand the goals of that company. And I think it's really important for the execution and the growth of a company to have that in place.
And I just like to comment a little bit in my role as a lawyer, because I see a lot of companies going through this process as they grow. Who do we hire first? When do we need such and such? And a lot of companies tend to be kind of reactive. Okay, we're raising money, I guess we need a CFO. But I think you could try to plan a little bit. It is true that a lot of these other functions can be outsourced on a part-time basis, and you can save money early on. So I'm certainly not suggesting that everyone go out and hire all the support functions immediately, because it can be expensive. I would say probably my experience would be CFO, general counsel, HR, in that order, but that's just my personal preference. All right, I'm just going to go into the second question, because we are really short on time. So this question is about recruiting. Given the specialized expertise longevity companies require, from biotech R&D to regulatory compliance, what strategies work best for identifying and securing top talent in a competitive ecosystem? And again, I think we're going to start with our entrepreneurs here, but we're going to flip the order. So you're on, Whitney.
Yeah, hiring definitely has its challenges. You want to make the right decision the first time. Personally, professionally, I found that hiring really happens by reaching out, in this space especially, within your networks, your communities, your associations, and really defining reaching out and asking, just saying, hey, is there, somebody that is going to be, the expert in this role, really beneficial, that can be flexible. Otherwise, it really depends. Like, if it's going to be a support role, if it's going to be something more fractional, there's really great areas like LinkedIn has wonderful program, the job search, and then there's Upwork. There's a lot out there. I would just say, just like a house, or when you're going out to purchase something, don't get the first one. Talk to 20. Like, just put a number out there and make sure you stick to that number, even if you feel like it's a waste of time. There might be someone that surprises you that maybe you wouldn't have chosen if you went with the second interview.
I'll just talk about mistakes I've made. So early in my career, I would always try to, what I thought was like the best person, like the best CV, they interview well. But it seemed like they wanted to be more in industry, more in a bigger company, and I would always try and see the entrepreneur in them. But in some people, there just isn't that. But I would try and see it, and I'd try to convince them and do whatever it took. And I think that was a massive mistake. I think some people that have it or they don't. So I would actually say, if you have to convince somebody too much, it's probably just not worth it. And when it's the right fit, it's just the right fit. And usually it happens quickly. And it's very normal. It's very without too much drama. So I would say, kind of just read the tea leaves and just, don't obsess over trying to see something in somebody that actually may not be there.
Do you have anything you want to add? Okay. Okay, question 3 has to do with balancing growth and compliance. As longevity startups scale, what early steps should leaders take to ensure they remain compliant with employment laws and other laws while growing? Whitney.
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think as anyone starting a business, they didn't get into it to think about the paperwork. They didn't get into it to think about, what does insurance look like, and what is tax laws, and, what do I need to do for the employee and payroll and all those other things. So I think right off the bat, it's really important to find a really solid PEO. I'm sure some people know it, some people don't, but professional employer organization is very helpful, because they're going to assist in HR, in onboarding, in multi-state tax, in especially in virtual environments where you're all across the board. That's super important. That would be like my number one, and making sure that you have really good solid structure with contracts in place. So, utilize a lawyer, and additionally even I guess you could go into trademark and other things, but just it's so much better when you do that right off the bat instead of later, because then you're having to kind of do a download and a backup, and it usually only happens from a reactive place when you decide that later.
Robin?
I don't think I have anything to add to that. I think maybe Greg knows more than me.
I'll build on what Whitney said just a little bit. You know, when you're a brand new business or you're in that growth phase and you're scaling into multi-jurisdictions, it's incredibly important to build into place, or from day one, that compliance piece into your growth strategy. You know, each state has its own employment law, has its own safety laws, you know, like with Cal OSHA, which supersede or is actually higher than federal OSHA. And the various wage and hour laws, workers' compensation laws. So it's very important that you lean on subject matter experts. There's a variety of solutions available, like an agile HR platform that you can use. Whitney referenced a PEO, like my company VensureHR, where we are kind of like a one-stop shop for compliance and employee benefits and comp. So there's solutions out there. But the cost of getting this stuff wrong will likely include fines, could include a lawsuit, which is probable in California at least. But I think more importantly, you're going to lose the talent that you spent a lot of money to recruit. And in this day and age where we live in social media, it only takes one person to start a wildfire. And when that spreads, that's very difficult to extinguish. And then you've got a PR nightmare on your hand over stuff that you likely could have addressed from very early on, if not day one. So that would be my recommendation. But on the flip side of that, if you get it right, you're building an organization that is investor ready, and equally as important, you're an employer of choice that will set you above your competition to be able to attract and retain great talent. So that would be my recommendation there.
Okay, and we're not going to ignore Jeff. We will get to Jeff. And maybe with this question, risk mitigation and insurance. From an operational and financial perspective, what are the key employment-related risks longevity companies often overlook, and how can they mitigate them before issues arise? Robin, have you had any employment? You don't have to be specific about it, but have you had employment issues?
I think every company has some employment issues. I think what I learned very early on is don't handle it myself. Just talk to HR. They'll tell me what to do, and I'll just do that. And that's game over, and it's done. So anytime I've thought too much about it, I've realized I've thought too much about it, and I shouldn't think too much about it. So just let somebody else who's a professional just deal with it, and I can focus on my job.
Yeah, not being a scientist or a founder in the longevity space, I'll defer to my talented panelists for a lot of these questions. But risk and insurance is an area that I do know and have spent 17 years thinking about. I'm just going to reiterate once again that I think aligning yourself with not just a vendor, but a true strategic partner across, PEO, your law firm, HR services, and of course, insurance and benefits is extremely valuable. Myself and my team, with our clients that we serve, we truly think of ourselves as the risk management arm of their organization, as they're young and they're growing and they're looking to us to be that consultative partner for them, and just ensure that we can see around corners for them. If they, are doing something that could potentially lead to litigation, we need to make sure they know about that. We need to do the benchmarking for them and truly be a risk management arm for them. And specific to longevity, a lot of these organizations are fast growing. You're working across different platforms, whether it be in a lab space, corporate and administrative, R&D, understanding those employees and their classifications and what the risks are, I think is extremely vital. Keeping your eye on cybersecurity and what can happen to an organization if they were to be victim to malware or a security breach, and some of the sensitive clinical trial or patient information that might be on hand if that's leaked. What else? Directors and officers. So you take on investors and you need directors and officers insurance. What does it mean when you take on an investor and they have potentially grounds to sue the organization for mismanagement of their asset? And what personal assets are at risk if I'm sitting on a board and providing my guidance? So we really dive into that heavily, and I think all of those areas are a lot to think about when you, as the founder, as the scientist, have a core mission and purpose that you started the organization for, but you just can't take your eye off the ball from these types of things. So again, strategic partners that you trust that are gonna take on some of that burden for you.
Okay, we got a couple more questions. I actually think we sort of saved two of the best for last. I hope you agree. One of them is collaboration and partnerships. As the longevity ecosystem matures, partnerships with academic institutions, investors, and service providers are becoming essential. What makes a good partnership from a people and success standpoint? And this one's for you, Whitney.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important things for growth. It becomes even more validated when you can align with people and companies on what that mission and what that outcome looks like. So it becomes a really beautiful synergy, especially in the longevity space, because everybody's showing up here to make sure that people are happier, people are healthier, people are living their most successful lives. So you already had a core alignment to begin with, and you find it in really unexpected places. So I would say my biggest recommendation for partnerships, even if you don't feel like it's in your lane or you feel like a company's too large to even consider you as a startup, just reach out. Like if you reach out to their, a sales director or the head of a company or make a connection at an event or on LinkedIn, you'd be surprised because a lot of them are looking for things that they don't have. So I think as long as you can identify, a strong connection in that space, you speak with somebody, it feels really aligned. You can tell right off the bat. Like I always have that rule, kind of like don't partner, don't work with assholes. It just works out a lot better that way. And so I just encourage everybody. It doesn't matter if you're pre-revenue, if you're really, you're off to a great start and you're growing your company. It's never a wrong time to reach out to a company of any shape or size or a person, regardless of your credentials or your background. Like all those conversations, especially in longevity, because it's such a rapid evolution happening, that most of the time you'll be surprised how often it leads to a partnership.
I'm just curious, what does your most important partner do for you, and how do you work with them?
Yeah, I mean, for us in particular at Soma, it's going to be the clinicians. So we work predominantly to run IRBs. So we work with we work with the review boards, we work with universities, but I'd say the clinicians, because they're in there with their patients, they're running these trials, they're going and getting that feedback, and then we're able to do more and more of that validated research. And you can do it a lot quicker, so you can do pre-IRB. So those are really important because they're spending a lot of time with those patients, and we're a value add to them as a distributor.
Okay, well, I wish we had more time on that one. It's a great topic, but this is another one that I think is near and dear to the heart of anyone who is running a company, and that's compensation and incentives. I get a lot of questions from clients on how to do this right. So how do you structure compensation incentive packages to attract and maybe more important to retain talent? Robin?
Yeah, I think this one where creativity doesn't really serve you well. So, we look at just the compensation reports, Thielander, there's so many of them out there, but, a number of them I always talk to my friends, so we work in an incubator, 25 companies. I can talk to 25 different CEOs and say, what are you looking at right now for senior scientist or director, et cetera. So I think aligning kind of anecdotal evidence from my own office building plus what I see in the industry gives you the bands. But I would also say, as I kind of alluded to before, if you have to convince somebody so much that if they're chasing every last dollar and you've got to pay them $3,000 more than the other person, then you're going to have that conversation again in 6 months. When somebody else offers them more, they go looking for something else. So I'd say we give them the bands, we try to be fair. I think if it's going to work out, they're going to come. And if it's not meant to work out, they're going to push on things like $3,000 more in salary or so it's a little bit more equity. I actually pay attention to more when people ask for more equity. I'm actually pretty impressed by that because they get where we are, they get where we're going, they get the vision. They're more aligned with the rest of us. So it very rarely happens, but when people actually understand that and actually that's what they want more of, it's very easy conversation. So, I'm looking a lot for mission alignment when we make hires.
Greg, are you seeing any trends in compensation patterns?
In the longevity space, I think it's important to have a competitive base salary and, align it with long-term incentives like equity, for example, and then include an enterprise-level employee benefit and retirement plan, because that really communicates to candidates that you're an employer of choice, that you really do care about your employees' health and well-being and financial stability for the future. We see this across. Well, we started out in cannabis 10 years ago, and that was kind of all over the map. But that's what we are seeing now, is that employers are truly interested and invested in helping their employees in their livelihoods.
Okay, well, this is the closing question, rapid fire. We'll start at the far end. Looking 5 years ahead, and everyone on the panel is going to answer this, what will define the most successful longevity companies?
Wow, that's a tough one considering all the unbelievable pitches and information that we've absorbed here today. What I can say is that it is an unbelievably exciting space. I can't think of an industry that I think is making larger leaps as we march forward. This is going to sound a little crude, but I sat out there this morning in the audience and thought to myself, everyone's going to start living longer soon, and no one's going to be overweight anymore. It's like they've solved that problem already. I'm just excited to watch it, quite frankly. And I don't think I could pinpoint what would be the biggest jump, but if we can make people healthier, live better lives, and live longer, God bless everybody in the room.
For me, I think it's demonstrating in 5 years that the drug you have, therapy you're bringing to the clinic, is the best in class for that specific disease. So longevity is an umbrella under which many indications sit. So showing that you're not just great at extending telomeres or revamping mitochondria or removing senescent cells, but actually showing that you can beat the best drug that's on the market right now handily in a head-to-head comparison is the best way to succeed. And from there, it's having an incredible safety profile so that you can start to expand into other indications, go into preventative medicine, et cetera. But I think it all starts with the hardest war, which is saying, this established drug, no, we're better than that, and here's the data that actually shows that.
Yeah, longevity is such a broad word when you start breaking down the types of companies. But I think the ones, and we've already seen it, that are going to be really successful is they're going to be very transparent. They're going to be, if it's consumer-based, they're going to be thinking of the consumer, not of their bottom line, not of the revenue that they're bringing in the door. They're going to, be as honest as possible, because I think just as we've all seen with social media and press and everything out there, it becomes any one thing is going to get blown up. And so I think, it's going to become really clear on who's being transparent, who has the safety profile, who's doing things correctly and incorrectly, just to weed out the ones that are not allowing the thriving success that we all need just because they're not being careful. So I think, the infrastructure of software, employment, partnerships, really important too, but I think just transparency.
I take a little bit different take on this, perhaps because I'm in the HR industry. But I look at an employer in the longevity industry who's going to be successful in the next 5 years is a company that has a strong leadership team that fosters a culture of transparency and trust that it engenders a an atmosphere that people feel valued and inspired when they go to work every day. And that will help that employer become that employer of choice to, again, I say a lot, attract and retain talent, because that is what's going to propel you forward. Because if you don't have that tier 1 talent, you're not going to get your products over the finish line and to the market. So
I'm last. This is somewhat of a variation on what Whitney said, but I think personalization in medicine is just going to be huge in the near future. And with that, sort of empowering consumers to take their health into their own hands more than they ever have and make decisions and lifestyle changes for themselves. So with that, do we have time? Will you guys stick around for a couple of questions? Do we have anyone who's got the microphone to hand to people?
I got one. What's the smartest way you've seen a founder use AI, not for research, but for management? Not here.
Is that a founder using AI for management? What's any examples of that? I mean, in this space, it gets a little tricky just because there's a lot of compliance, so you have to be really careful about the internal software that you're using. For us, really, it's come down to there's wonderful AI that's been integrated into CRM systems. So, for example, like HubSpot, there's a bunch out there, but that's become very empowering because most management, not for lack of them trying, it's just they weren't really technical to begin with. They're really good at leading people and building teams. So it's really helpful when they can just generate a task automatically by telling a piece of software to do it, and then that's translating to the entire team. There's a lot of wonderful benefits of those types of integrations. Most of them aren't authorized to use ChatGPT or anything like that in the office, but they are built into a lot of the systems we're seeing.
All right, moving on. Thank you, panelists and Lonnie.